All right, welcome back, guys. We're here on Yard Work. Landon, Hutchinson, Tom Davidson, and we've got the head coach of Rio Grande with the RedStorm here, Coach Warnimont. Thanks for coming on with us. Appreciate you letting us steal your morning.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we've been doing this for a few days now. We want to kind of get a little more of your background before we jump into anything, how you got to where you're at right now, maybe a couple of the stops along the way, and just go from there.
Well, my history, right after college, and I was fortunate enough that my former head coach, Roger Ingalls at Ohio Wesleyan, came from Ohio State as a graduate assistant. And I expressed an interest to him to stay in the coaching profession, and it was my passion. And I was fortunate enough to get hired on at Ohio State as a graduate assistant. And then from there, the doors sort of opened up. I finished my master's degree and went on from Ohio State then. And I knew if I was going to coach at a smaller institution that you're going to wear several hats. And I also played football in college. So my former college football coach then was hired on at Cornell. So I called him to ask for a reference, and he said, hey, if you're looking to get into the football as well, why don't you come out and coach with us? He said, it's not a graduate assistant position, but it's a part-time coaching position. We treat it as an assistant coach. So lo and behold, I go from Ohio State and go out to Cornell as a paid football assistant. And fortunate enough, I coached under a Hall of Fame football guy, Maxie Vaughn, which big-time NFL career, which some of the younger guys aren't going to know that name, but he's back in the Chuck Bednarik days with the crooked fingers. Their fingers are going everywhere, and Maxie was an old-school football guy, so it was awesome to be around him and get some of those stories. And fortunate enough that, 1 year on the football program at Cornell, we won the championship. So I was there 1 year. And, the rumor mill started, and the baseball coach said, well, you coach baseball. And I said, well, would you be interested in helping us as well? I said, well, shoot, yeah. So I ended up going into Cornell and sort of not relieved of some of my recruiting duties with football and, started coaching with the baseball team as well. So in 1 year, I got both ends of that at the Division I Ivy League level. So I was very, very excited about that and very fortunate. And, then from there, the interviews started to happen, and Cornell being the academic prestigious institution that it is. My first job I interviewed at Rose-Hulman out in Indiana, and first head coaching job, and as a football and baseball. And what happened was I got second place. But the gentleman that interviewed me was so impressed that he gave my information on to Bethany College in West Virginia. A week later interview, the next week later, guess what? I'm moving to West Virginia. So that was my first head coaching job at age 24. So things moved really quick for me. So it was assistant football coach, head baseball, taught in the physical education department. Spent one year there. And through summer baseball, which people ask about connections, I coached in the Great Lakes League with Roger Ingalls. We coached with the Lima Locos and ran into Steve Whitmire, which he was coaching the Sandusky team at the time. And he said, I just got the pitching coach job at Wake Forest. Ashland University is going to open up. Would you be interested? I'm like, shoot, yeah. So sent my resume within a week, had an interview within a week. I was moving to Ashland. So went from NCAA Division III to II, got out of the football end. No football involved at Ashland, just baseball, and spent 7 years there. And then from there, we went to the World Series there in 7 years. And then moved on to Salem International in West Virginia, got a little closer to my wife's folks down in Southeast Ohio. Spent 4 years there, Salem International. And then I've been at Rio here for 19 years, which moved real close to my wife, right across the street from mother and father-in-law. So, and that's been sort of my journey. And so sort of a conventional way, graduate assistant that led to then an assistant, then another assistant position, and then onto my head coaching position.
So you basically touched every level from D1 at some position on multiple sports, and then D2, D3. Now you're running NAIA over there. What do you see as the difference as far as maybe from the institutional level, and then maybe touch on the player part of it as well?
Well, I think the players are very similar to the NCAA Division II level. And I think that, very, very comparable. I think with us and Landon, having played for me, understands the work ethic that goes into that. And, our limitations as far as, number of hours a week, the 20-hour rule, obviously the NAIA doesn't have that. We don't have a mandatory off day. We now have a suggested off day, which this was the first year that we really honored that. I was giving guys Monday off, and, if they wanted to get swings in, they could, but the cages were open. And so, I mean, as far as that goes, the NCAA 2 and NAIA parallel each other. Scholarship-wise, which I think people don't know this, but institutionally, if you're able to, really NCAA Division II has less scholarships than NAIA. Division I has less scholarships than NAIA. The maximum for NAIA is 12. So, I mean, people out there going, wow, I didn't really realize that. But so, I mean, as far as resources, now that's an institutional thing. I mean, whether you allow them the full amount of scholarship dollars, then, that goes from program to program. But so that's how that works.
So yesterday, Landon and I talked for a little bit about, there's a talent level difference from a Division I kid on down to even a JC kid or an NAIA, and how that talent levels is really shrinking. And especially in Ohio, we talk about it all the time on how many really good teams there are in Ohio, and how many, top players that, are available for schools at every division level to really recruit in-house there.
Yeah, I mean, that's you're always looking for that diamond in the rough. And the only player that I've ever had play, well, not to get to the final level, which would be Gene Steckschulte, who's now the head coach at Ohio Northern University. But Gino came in and at Ashland for me, and I mean, he was a guy that was 6'4", 195 pounds. And you look at him and you say, oh my goodness, what a specimen. He could run. He had an arm. He had a glove as big as a bushel basket. He's playing shortstop, and he fields it. He drops to a knee, and then you can hear the ball across the diamond. I said, holy cow. The game I went and saw, he was 4 for 6 with 2 home runs, 2 doubles. And I said, if I can't teach that kid how to field and we can't get him an infielder's glove, then, I can't do my job. So 2 years later, he's All-American as a shortstop. And he ends up signing an independent contract then at the Cardinals, with the St. Louis Cardinals, and ends up in the bigs. So, and Gino, just top shelf, great, the definition of student athlete. Graduated with, I think, a 3.97, and the only B he got at Ashland was in handball. And I think he didn't beat the professor, I think, is what it was. But Gino was just outstanding in the classroom, went on to get his MBA at Xavier. So the model student athlete. And he also he tried playing basketball there as well. He was a guy that could go in the gym and dunk any way you wanted to. And so he played basketball for 1 season until I talked him out of it, which was good to see what his potential really was in the baseball field. So,
but you got him the right size of glove?
Oh, well, yeah. We got him a smaller glove. So, but, and he wasn't dropping to a knee anymore either. But the story with that is he played 7 different positions as a freshman.
Oh, wow.
Until we worked with his fundamentals, I had him in left, center, right. He pitched, played third, he played short, played first, didn't catch, and didn't play second. So, but I mean, the talent pool, I guess what you're looking at is you go out and you watch a kid, we're still looking for that passion. You might be a little undersized, but the guy played with his hair on fire. I want to see the heartbeat. I want to see how he plays and what he can bring to the table. And when you're looking out there, everyone needs to see the potential. Maybe they got a flaw in the swing that if the young man's coachable, we can work with that. Or velocity-wise, the guy that's hovering around 80 but has growth potential, you're going, okay, can spin it a little bit. I like that. He might shoot up a couple inches and put on 15 pounds. So, I mean, the long shot guy that comes in 77, 78 and leaves 86, 88, and you're like, where'd this guy come from? Well, he was homegrown and we developed him. That's what we're looking for. But, and at our level, and now you'll agree with me on this one, but with the transfer portal, I mean, we're getting bounce backs all the time. If we get lucky enough to get a bounce back guy that has that skill set, that, then you got something special. And the velocity, obviously the junior college route that we're constantly, in the recruiting trail on, and trying to find that guy that is a quick fix for us on the mound, or the shortstop, or the big donkey that hits bombs. The dynamic has changed, and you want to try to keep those guys that are in your program as well happy and moving forward as well. So hopefully that answered it. I bounced around a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's perfect.
Took a step back through memory lane with Gino.
Coach, so when you're recruiting guys and stuff, what states do you like to recruit from, and what's kind of like your recruiting method? What are you looking for in those guys? You said you like guys that have passion, but there's got to be one swing that you're looking for with a hitter, or one thing that you're looking for pitching wise. What are those things?
Well, I mean, like with yourself, if there's a guy out there that has a swing and miss pitch, and back in the day when I was recruiting you, Landon, your slider was your pitch. That was a swing and miss, and you could throw it anywhere in the count. So if a guy's out there, but the velocity maybe isn't right, but they've got an out pitch, and then you look at and say, well, that guy, we see him as a bullpen guy developing into a starter down the road and build his confidence. And you sort of know the roadmap to that. You started out of the bullpen and developed into a starter for us. So as that goes, and as we build confidence and maturity and development, but we're pretty much recruiting, nationwide right now. We've got a couple kids out of Florida. We do honor the Midwest tuition exchange at Rio Grande, which is awesome. We have 8 states in the Midwest that we reciprocate their tuition. So they pay basically a little over what a normal in-state student athlete would play at Rio at the community college price. And, we're the only school in the nation that is a community college within a 4-year school. So any of those kids in the state of Ohio pay the community college price, which the tuition is about $6,600 and their room and board is about $11,500. So we're very affordable. Then once they get to the private school rate, the tuition jumps, and they get a pretty substantial academic award based off their grade point averages as well. So, and, in those states, which is Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, Wisconsin, the Dakotas, that we reciprocate that. So that's widened our recruiting base a little bit. And obviously we can't get out to see all those guys. And with the virus right now is really not really handcuffing us, but a lot of kids are sort of falling back into our lap, and we're using a lot of recruiting services to follow up with a phone call. There's a lot of 80 to 82s out there pitching wise that we're reaching out to with an email or a phone call or a follow-up and saying, hey, we're 6'2", 195 and 80 to 82 right now, and we see a lot of developmental potential there. So, but as far as the swing goes, me, I'm sort of an old school guy. So I'm looking, if a guy can run, if he's, got three of the 5 tools, I'm pretty happy. But I like the one that the foot speed that can handle the bat a little bit, that shows that they play into their strength as a player. In our day of swing and miss, I sort of cringe every time we strike out. I want to see those guys battle and scrap around with 2 strikes and put it in play and make things happen. And but I mean, again, I'm looking for a heartbeat. I want to see those guys that have passion to play and going to get after it.
You touched on the tech side. Where does that sit, like, in your recruiting, a path there? If you've got, how are you getting these guys out of Florida? Are you using those tech pieces, like, whatever it is, whether it's a field level or an NCSA type of program? Are you using those to kind of locate these guys first and then say, okay, I'm a little intrigued, let's go, see this guy live?
Well, for me, and this is just me personally, I'm an old school guy. So I get a call from a guy, a good buddy that, and I'm following up that way. I'm saying, okay, we see the bat speed, we see the exit velocity. I'm always skeptical, with the exit velocity, and this is just the old school guy coming out in me, is what happens when they spin it? That exit velocity doesn't help if we swing and miss. So, yeah. I mean, can he hit a breaking ball? And that's one of the things I'm really scrutinizing. Can he stay on the breaking ball? Does he have an approach with 2 strikes? That X velocity is good, but if it doesn't contact the ball, I mean, it doesn't help us. So, I use a lot of connections. I use a lot of my, I've got guys in Florida. I've got guys that scouts that here, there, and we follow up and, hey, this guy's in your area. And, the product is what you're trying to sell, is how you do things, and, and the success of the program and what we've done. And hopefully those kids, want to hover to those, our program, because of what we've done and the success we've had.
One thing I noticed too, the differences between, NCAA baseball and, NAIA baseball and even JUCO, they're kind of similar in this way, is the Hispanic background. You've had your history of that. Where do you typically go, when you get kids from, Hispanic backgrounds?
Well, again, my first, and this, again, you're talking about connections. My first Latin player I got was, and I got a dry phone call from a coach in Puerto Rico. Said, "Hey, coach, I got a couple of guys for you. What are you looking for?" I said, "How about a pitcher? How about an outfielder? An outfielder that can run? I got just the thing. I got 2 guys for you." Well, my first guy, and I picked him up at the airport, and they hopped off the airport, and all I heard was muy frio, which is very cold. No jackets. I went, holy cow, here we go. What are we going to do? And they didn't understand any English, and I didn't understand any Spanish other than muy frio. So, and that developed into, we had an ESL program, and we developed those kids in the classroom, and, it was a learning curve, but I brought them in halfway through the year. So, I mean, along with them learning the language and learning the game. And one of those was one of my former assistants that's now with the Baltimore Orioles as an assistant coach in their instructional league, Christian Frias. And Christian, he would go back home to Puerto Rico, and he would sort of work those guys out and have like a little mini tryout. And if a boy didn't follow up with his FAFSA, didn't follow up with his application and his transcript, you saw how dedicated he was. And so we crossed him off the list. That on the surface he looked good, but what were the little red flags behind that? And then through that, we followed some of those players through junior colleges, and then it became one of those things. You had 4 or 5 or 6 Latin players on your roster, and with the ESL program, we were able to develop them in the classroom, and it's worked very well for us. So, but again, 100% connection. I mean, other than the dry phone call, I took a shot on the guy, and one of the 2 guys panned out. The pitcher came in at 6'2", 170 pounds, and he left about 6'3" and about 235. So he liked our dining hall very well. So the other little guy didn't make it to the next year. So I mean, that happens. There's stories, but one player led to another player, and then led to a fantastic connection with Christian Frias. And then Christian came back after he played professionally, came back and coached with me for a year. And, he ended up getting a job at Midwest powerhouse junior college, Wabash Valley. So that was a very good recruiting connection for us. And Christian spent, I think, 3 or 4 years at Wabash Valley, and they went to the World Series a couple times. So we were able to draw on 3 players from their program, which his success rate and work ethic was just phenomenal. So again, we want to recruit from winning programs. So that's part of that.
The current situation with the pandemic going on, how is that going to change maybe your recruiting capabilities this year, or as far as the guys that you have currently on the roster versus what you need to look for and things like that?
Well, it's really tough right now, and who knows, we're hoping they get wound back up in summer ball. But I really think that it's going to be beneficial to us, because there's a lot of kids out there right now, which setting on this end, and Landon, you will probably agree with me, that are in panic mode. Mm-hmm. They don't know where they're going to go, what they're going to do. They haven't been seen, or the senior that shot up 3 inches and has developed and, isn't able to really showcase anything to anyone right now. So I'm getting a lot of emails and following up on those emails with, wow, I'm out here. come find me. And that I think there's going to be a lot of kids that, once the programs sell themselves, that like I had one the other day that the boy had already applied, been accepted, and, reached out to me. So, I mean, I don't want to say they're falling back in our lap, but kids that were interested a little bit before are a better word, but sort of in panic mode about what their future entails if they, they haven't had a great deal of communication. So I guess I always try to look at the glass half full, and I sort of see it half full right now. Is there's a lot of very good players out there that are still available and haven't been able to really showcase what they can do. So, whether summer ball gets fired back up again or not, but, and then I think there's the other factor out there is what happened to the top shelf guy that you signed in the fall, the Division I's, that now all of a sudden you have your senior that's back and you have no room for him, or you see more potential in the freshman. I mean, I think there's going to be another door that's going to open up there as well, that you're going, wow, man, I really don't have a home anymore. I'm looking. So I think there's going to be a lot of movement from institution to institution, and they're allowing those kids to come back and stay and play if they have the resources and opportunities, which we're doing as well. So it's just a matter of where they fit in your scheme of the program right now, with some of the top shelf guys that you were diligent with and went out and got and signed early. And now your complexion is going to change a little bit. So
who or what was that inspiration to you, Coach, that made you want to start coaching when you were younger?
Well, just the love of the game. I mean, and I'm gonna revert back to Roger Ingalls. Roger was my guy. He came from Ohio State. And when I was at Ohio Wesleyan, I played both sports. And when I went to baseball, and like most high schools programs, either you got really good coaches or you got guys that are, well, not so good. And when I went to college, I just felt that in that first year, Roger's knowledge, that I learned so much. And, I wanted to grasp more of that. I mean, and it really, my love of all sports. Obviously, I played 3 sports in high school, and sport to sport, but getting the right guy and actually learning and being in the right environment where, a little bit more than, the X's and O's part of the game. And my junior and senior year, we were successful. My freshman year, I played with a guy, Tim Corbin, at Vanderbilt. So, I mean, and Tim will probably tell you the same story, that we were awful that year. I mean, we were awful. Our claim to fame was we broke Marietta's 25-game win streak. We were not very good. But, and he'll probably give you the same grassroots story, that he learned a great deal of baseball from Roger. And then he went on to Ohio State as a graduate assistant. That was sort of, I followed in his footsteps. So learning the game, but Roger really sparked a passion and for me in the game of baseball, just because of his knowledge and what I learned in that short period of time at Ohio Wesleyan. So right guy in the right situation and being able to grasp the knowledge, and then, going to conventions and learning, coaches out there right now are kids. If you have a weakness, make it a strength. I didn't know much about middle infield play. So every clinician that was speaking at the ABCA, man, I honed in on every middle infield, every infielder discussion, and tried to learn and bring that to my coaching plate. Tried to grow as a coach. At Ohio State, I started out with Dick Finn, and Dick threw me in the bullpen. Well, other than being a catcher, I didn't know much about pitching mechanics. But once you sit down and you're breaking down video and you're learning those aspects and how to work with those guys mechanically. So, that was a big curve for me. And again, a lot of that, came from Roger Ingalls, now the athletic director at Capital University, but he was my baseball coach at Ohio Wesleyan and retired from the actual baseball coaching to get into administration. So.
Coach, before we let you go, can you give us some, maybe one or two of your best stories about our dear friend Landon here?
The best story I can give you about Landon, and this is a classic, and good thing Landon liked mustard. Landon was pitching in the national tournament in Kingsport, Tennessee, and he was throwing a gem in a national tournament. And it was about 90. I mean, it was one of those freakishly hot days in the late spring. And Hutch starts cramping. He's on the mound, and we're winning the ball game, and he's cramping. And I learned something I didn't know, that mustard relieves the cramps in a quick fashion. So as Landon's writhing around on the ground, we're trying to get him mustard from the concession stand. We're running him mustard packets out there to try to alleviate the cramps. So,
yep, but, lid full of mustard, just licks it right up.
Yeah, he found a way to get his uniform dirty that day, but a gritty performance. And Landon, I mean, absolutely threw a gem that day and competed for us very well. But he got his uniform dirty, but it was writhing around on the dirt mound with the cramps in both legs.
Looked like a shortstop after his cramp came through.
Exactly. Looks like he slid into second, but landed on his back. But
I think we have the same issue going on now.
What's that?
He got up from one of these yesterday talking about a cramp in his leg.
We're going to have that guy put mustard packets in his pockets, right?
Yeah. You know what I use mustard for? If you've got the hiccups and you do a spoonful of mustard, gone.
Ah, how about that?
100%.
So you learn something every day. How about that? Landon Hutchinson story, writhing on the mound and cramps, leads to getting rid of the hiccups. I learned something.
There you go. Well, thanks for coming on with this. We really appreciate it. I know it's special for Landon. I think you've got just an amazing story traveling from, pretty much all over the place. Those are the kind of things we look for. And, I just thank you for letting us come on with you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.